Hello everyone who's watching on YouTube or Vimeo or wherever. I'm Maurice Barratt and I've got another study in the 6,000 Years of Babylon series. We're coming to the end of book 3. It's the thickest book because there's lots of illustrations and information in it. And the book's available. There's 5 books to cover the whole series. There's, I don't know how many, maybe 40 studies. We're up to number 28. And I've cut this study into 2 parts. It was a long study and I thought it's too long for one, so I'm going to do half this afternoon, half this evening. And that fits nicely because tomorrow morning it's just I've just got 1 sheet of paper. It's a short study. It leaves time for testimony and the gifts to operate, and it's more of an exhortation. It was an introduction to one of the conferences I held before. So the books are available from Amazon as a paperback or Kindle download, and you can get the books from Barratt Ministries website, www.barrattministries.org.uk. I've called this study Evolution Complete because the devil's plan is evolution, to take man and make him God so he can live forever and never have to face the judgment. So Satan is safe if men don't face the judgment. He can stay on this earth and people can live in the sin. So if he can make men live forever, that's part of his plan, to make us gods. And I'm going to do this in 2 parts because it's a long study. So this is just part 1. I've got a quote. I like to put quotes at the beginning to provoke thought. And this is from Dr. Richard Seed, and it's from a book, Preparing for Singularity. If you don't know what singularity is, I think it was Ray Kurzweil who coined the phrase, who invented the musical instrument, the synthesizer, another inventor. And he believes that man can live forever. And when men reach that state, he's called it the singularity. In other words, when men and robots, or men, we alter our DNA, we become one. That's when we become gods. The singularity. That's what, and this is what this man said. And he's a doctor, Dr. Richard said, we're going to become gods, period, full stop, no doubt. If you don't like it, get off. You don't have to contribute. You do not have to participate. But if you're going to interfere with me becoming a god, you're going to have trouble. There'll be warfare. He's going to be a god, like it or not. Don't get in my way. That's in his book, Preparing for Singularity. These people are determined we're going to become gods. I don't think that the devil couldn't do it if God didn't step in. God always steps in when men get to that peak, the Tower of Babel, the flood, when they were messing with the genetics and angels were mating with women. Another quote from Manly P. Hall. The Masons really look up to him. The secret of all the ages, the secret teachings of all ages. Lest these secrets processed, fall into uncultured hands and be perverted, the great arcanum, that's mystery, was always conceived in symbols and allegories. Satan uses symbols and allegories to let the initiated know what it's about. Whenever I see a film and I see the Washington Monument and the tower and the lake there, with the shadow in the lake, I know that all Masons think this is a message for us. This film, there's messages in it because he uses symbols. He uses the pyramid, the one eye symbol. There's many messages that he uses through symbolism. Why? Why does the devil use symbolism? Because it's a counterfeit of God. And God uses symbolism all through the Bible. You'll see if you think when God does God use symbolism? Yes, of course, I'll give a few examples in a bit. But God uses symbolism, allegories, parables, mysteries. That's what an allegory is. That's what a symbol is. It looks this, it's a triangle, but actually it means this to those who know. Do you understand? X marks the spot. There's a mystery there. That's where the treasure is, where the X is. It's a mystery. It's only an X. But hidden behind it is the mystery, the pot of gold, the elixir of life, whatever it is. Well, I could do a whole conference on genetics. Not that I'm any expert on it. I'm quoting what people say and trying to sort out the facts from the fantasy. But we all know that we're now experimenting and altering our DNA. My friend Stephen Whitehead was a specialist in urology at Lincoln Hospital, and because he was high up, then the pharmaceutical industry used to come round and introduce him to the latest drugs, you know, for the treatment of bladder cancer and all those things to do with waterworks. That's urology. And this man came and he was telling them about this latest drug that they've got to help. I think it was bladder cancer. And Stephen suddenly thought, and so he said to the rep, so what you're saying is drugs alter our DNA? And the rep said, what made you think of that? He said, well, it's obvious from what you're telling me. He said, not many people ask me that question. He said, yes. These drugs, medicinal drugs, were altering the DNA. That's dangerous, isn't it? Because that's what you are. It's changing you. Because that's your DNA, that string of DNA. It's the information about you, the colour of your hair and the colour of your eyes and your makeup. So when they alter your DNA, they're you. They're altering Maurice Barratt. It's scary, isn't it? And we know researchers have replaced animal genes with human, mixed them, grown human parts on animals. I mean, this was 2009 when I wrote this, because I've got my notes from 10 years ago in the first preacher, and I don't need to update it because you know everything's advanced. But even then, in 2009, I put a doctor where cloning is legal. It's not illegal in every country, you know, to clone humans. It is in the West, but there's certain countries that allow it. Has already cloned human embryos and placed it into the womb of donors. He's already cloned humans. That was in 2009. I've got a quote from the Independent newspaper, 2009. A controversial doctor has claimed to have cloned human embryos and transferred them to 4 women prepared to give birth to the first cloned babies. Fertility specialists Panayotis Savos sensationally broke the sacred taboo of human individuality by cloning 14 embryos. You lose your individuality. If I'm a clone of Maurice, I'm not a one-off. I'm not individual, am I? Can you see? The devil wants to take our individuality away. Everyone is different. Every fingerprint is different in the world. Every eye scan. That's why they can scan everyone in the world with their eye scan, because your pupils are different. We're all individually made by God. But a clone is the same. You lose your individuality. It's messing with God's creation. Can you see how dangerous it is? And he placed 11 of them into the wombs of 4 women, he told the Independent. That's 2009, we've done it now. Did you know that universities run courses on transhumanism? You can enter a university and do a course on transhumanism and posthumanism. You know, when you mix your DNA with an animal, you're no longer human. You're a hybrid. You're part human, part animal, because they alter your genetic makeup. So that the scientists believe that one day nobody will be human. We're entering the post-human stage of evolution where men are becoming gods. We're no longer human. We have there's going to be a quantum leap in consciousness. This is spiritual, of course, by initiation, and we'll all become gods. But of course, we'll have to get rid of 5/6 of the world population, because, you know, only the elite can do this. The others have to be destroyed. That's eugenics, isn't it? Well, I don't think the world realise, and I don't think most Christians realise what's going on. And they're being conditioned through the media, through science, through medical science, to accept these perversions. And that's what they are when they mess with DNA. They're creating monsters, really. Remember what God said. Now, nothing will be restrained from them. This was the Tower of Babel. Because the Tower of Babel was a gateway. It wasn't just a tower to reach up to heaven. It was spiritual. They wanted man to become gods, a stairway to heaven. And God said with the Tower of Babel, now nothing will be restrained from them that they've imagined to do. Whatever we've imagined to do, we can do it. Men imagined that we could fly like birds. 300 years ago, they would laugh, men will never fly. Now we can travel at 500 miles an hour, faster than the fastest bird and higher than the highest bird. We can travel at 5 miles high, at 500 miles in every hour. Because we imagined it. Nothing will be restrained. And God scattered them, but we're now getting the knowledge again that they had then to do it. Unbelievable. If people said you could go in this container and you go under the sea and you could stay there for 6 months because it's nuclear powered, stay under the water for 6 months in this room, ridiculous, and 50 men be there, and you could take enough food to last you, and it's ridiculous. If they told my great granny that I could see my children in Australia on a picture on the wall, because that's what the flat screen television is. It's as thin as a painting. You put it on the wall, don't you? A flat screen television. There's no big tube now. It's like a picture, a flat screen. It's about 1 inch depth. A picture on the wall could see my granny in Australia. She said, that's witchcraft. That's impossible. You can't see. That's not your granny. That's demons impersonator. They would have thought it was demons impersonating because it's not possible. But men imagined it and it's now possible. Now nothing will be restrained. And the devil inspires these inventions. And nothing will be restrained. We'll find the cure to lasting life, to live forever. We're already, when people's heart fails, we can put another heart from another person and they can keep living. You can download your memory. Did you know you can download? They've located the part where your memory is in your brain. They know exactly where the memory's stored. That's the hard drive. A computer's only based on the human brain. And so they can download that, they can put lobes in your head, and they can download your memory and put it in somebody else. You'd become them. They can put your memory in a clone. It's unbelievable what they do, and I won't go into all the science, but you don't need to know, but it's unbelievable what they've done. And university courses, transhumanism, posthumanism, learning about what the world will be like when we're no longer human in a university. So how near are we? It's scary, isn't it? Well, a little bit about DNA. Listen, I'm not a medical person, so I've got these facts. So if you can't follow it, it took me a bit. You'll get something. DNA is stored in our chromosomes. And chromosomes are thread-like structures made of DNA, molecule and protein. And during cell division, chromosomes coil up tightly into X shapes and are more easily visible under microscopes. All right, you've seen a double helix, haven't you? You've seen the strand of DNA and it's a double helix. I've got some pictures of it in a minute. Well, this is what the religion of Babylon, the mystery, is all about. Satan's tried to find a race his way, full of demons, genetic engineering, angels mating with women. Well, human cells have 23 pairs of chromosomes. You've got 43 chromosomes, 23 from the man, 23 from the woman, and they get together and there's 46 chromosomes, and that's the string of your DNA. And people have said it'll stretch to the moon and back, I don't know, but they've actually found it's a book. Did you know that's your string of DNA? It's a sentence. There's phrases of DNA and then like a comma and then another phrase and a comma. And that's your makeup. So it's the book of life. It has actually a book. There's the sentences all detailing your DNA. David knew about that by the Holy Ghost. He didn't call it DNA. He said, my substance was in the bowels of the earth, and in continuous were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And David's describing DNA in terms, and non-DNA terms, because he didn't know. He talked about my substance. He's talking about my DNA. I was curiously wrought in the bowels of the earth. And that fashioned me when as yet there was nothing. He's talking about the book of life. Did you know that's what alchemy is all about? I said it last study. To make men into gods. But they need to find the secret of eternal life. Well, I've got some alchemical illustrations. Alchemy. I've got some illustrations. Look at them. Now this is that's a string of DNA. That's a modern description of DNA. Can you see it? The double helix. Okay. The Egyptians knew about that. They knew it hundreds of years ago. Let me show you some pictures. There's the Time magazine. Now, why have Time magazine? Can you see the man and woman in double helix? And there's Adam and Eve. Why are they using the world using Adam and Eve? It's showing you the DNA. They're telling you what's happening, that they're going to find the answer to Adam and Eve. How is man made up? All right, Joni. All right, there's the 4 acids that make up DNA. I don't understand that. But can you see it's like a ladder, a stairway? It's a ladder. All right, these are hundreds of years old. These are pictures of alchemy. Can you see them? The 2 philosophers trying to make lead into gold with the cauldrons. Can you see the pole in the middle and the helix going round it? Why have they got that? They're trying to turn men into gods. There's another one. 2 serpents in the double helix. Why has alchemy done that? That's the double helix, isn't it? They say the DNA, there's Satan trying to reproduce the DNA. They know what they're doing. I've got more, Joni. There's a picture. Can you see the double helix? These are all allegories and pictures, prophecy. Now there's Egyptian. There's an old Egyptian hieroglyphics. Can you see the snakes? That could be DNA, couldn't it? Why have they got that, the double helix? It's because spiritually they knew. You know, the Masons and all that, it goes right back to Egypt. I've got a book there. I think it's there. I'm going to quote from it. The Secret History of the World. There's Lucifer's eye on it. I don't recommend you read these books. God lets me read these books for research. But they prove, that's the alternative, the secret history. They prove that Abram, of course he was into alchemy. Didn't he go into Egypt? Abram went into Egypt. That's where he learned all the mystic secrets. Jacob went down to Egypt. Joseph, of course he was a mason and a grand master. Of course he was, because he married the priest of Egypt's daughter. Can you see how we know that? But they use it for their alternative history, the counterfeit. And they go through all the Bible and show that all these men, that Jesus was a grand master. He knew the mystic secrets because he went down to Egypt, didn't he? He went down to Egypt. You can see every time anyone went down to Egypt, they say that's where they learned the alchemical process. That's where they learned the secrets. It's come from Egypt. Well, there's the imagery. And DNA's been described as a ladder. In the Masonic symbols, there's a Masonic symbol, alchemical symbol. There's a ladder from earth to heaven. Man becoming gods. The pop song is Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page. One of the most famous rock songs is Stairway to Heaven. And I've got the words in the book, I won't read them, but when you read it, it's following a lady and following a... But it's alchemy. It's man becoming gods, a stairway to heaven. On the Masons' pictures, many of them, there's a winding stairway. The Statue of Liberty's got a winding stairway. It's the stairway to heaven. Well, Satan wants to make us gods so we'll never have to face the judgment. If you can live forever, you'll never die. Therefore, you'll never have to face the judgment. Hebrews 9 verse 27. As it is appointed unto men once to die. You've got to die. We're born to die because of sin. But after this, the judgment. Don't worry, Eve. Eat the fruit. You'll never die. I'll find a way to make you live forever. And he's trying to fulfill his promise to mankind to make us live forever. So we won't have to face God's judgment. She did face God's judgment. He lied to her and he's not been able to do it yet. And when he gets very near, God will step in and Jesus will come and spoil his plan. But he'll get very close to it. I mean, the angels mated with women, so that was very close to it. There were giants in the land. They were mighty men. Probably built the pyramids and many other things. So the discovery of DNA, I believe, was one of the most important inventions in the world. Because it was the key. They found the answer to life. It's in our DNA. And they've now found that the only reason we age is because a little bit of our DNA, when we're about 30, because you reproduce until you're 30 and you reach your pinnacle and then you start going downhill, don't you? You're in the middle age from 30 to, say, 45, and then that's middle age, and then you're in old age. So from 1 to 30, but a little bit of your DNA goes brittle. If that doesn't go brittle, you will never die. That's the aging process, this little bit of your DNA. It tells you today it goes brittle, and therefore you start to, not reproduce your cells, and you slowly start to fade away. But they're that close. And don't tell me they won't do it. If God doesn't step in, they'll do it. Like I said, people say they'll never do that. They'll never fly. They'll never go to the moon. They'll never do this. God won't allow them to do that. Well, God's allowed people to do a lot. And God will allow the Antichrist to control the world and get worshipped as God. That's pretty allowing, isn't it? God will allow that. So God will step in at the last moment. So we don't worry. We know the end of the plan. So it started in the Garden of Eden with the tree of life. I know I've said some of the things in the studies, but repetition's good for teaching. So if I've said them in previous studies, I don't apologise for saying again. We need to get it into our mind. It started in the Garden of Eden with the tree of life. When mortal man ate it, he didn't age. That was the only reason that Adam would have still been alive now, because he ate the tree of life. That kept him living forever. He was mortally made of the dust, and he would go back to the dust if he didn't eat of the tree of life. So when God said you'd surely die, he didn't curse him with death. He just took the means of eternal life away and took the tree out. Well, didn't take the tree out of the garden. He took Adam out of the garden, so he couldn't access the tree of life to keep you living forever. It's in the new heaven and the new earth, the tree of life. It keeps mortal men living forever. Many people on the new earth are saved, albeit mortal, but they'll have eternal life because they've got the tree of life and 12 manner of fruits for the healing of the nations. That's on the new heaven and the new earth, eternity. Christians think we'll all have spiritual bodies, but the nations that are saved have access to the city, and that's the spiritual, that's the bride of Christ. I can't go into it, but it's quite plain in Revelation. There's not only people in heaven and hell, there's people on the new earth, and the kings of the earth bring the glory to the city, and they can go in and out. But the bride is the city. They're the spiritual ones. They're Christ. They're the light of the world. There's no light. The sun and the moon won't be shining. The city will be the light because we'll be the light of the world with Christ. Like Christ was transfigured. I found out this week, I read a book and I found out that everything living emits light. Did you know that? It's so infinitesimal that you can't see it, but we emit light and we absorb light very, very, very slightly. Everything that's living takes light in and emits light. Adam must have been clothed in light in the garden. Shining beings. Jesus was transfigured. He emitted light. We're clothed with light. We've lost it, haven't we, because of the fall? But it's there in our very, very makeup. I won't go into that. I didn't know about that, photons that we give off. So Adam wouldn't have aged. He'd have lived forever. That's not an allegory. It's as fact, as much as anything else does. You know, when God does a miracle, it's not a miracle to God. It's only a miracle to us. It's only a miracle because it couldn't happen to our understanding, with no scientific explanation. So if I've got no arm and somebody prays for me and a new arm grows, if you saw it under a microscope, it wouldn't be a miracle. The arm would grow, wouldn't it? On the molecular level, you'll see it scientifically. It's scientific. Maybe it's speeded up. Maybe it couldn't happen naturally, but there's a real world explanation. It's not mystical. If my hand grows, you can touch it and feel it, and there's muscle and sinew and everything in it. So Adam would be alive today if God didn't take him out of the garden. That's why God took him out of the garden and put the flaming sword in the cherub so he couldn't go back. And I believe that was washed away in the flood, the Garden of Eden. But before that, they couldn't go in. There was a cherubim there, so they must have known where it was, because God put a flaming sword and cherubim to guard the way. So it was a literal thing, wasn't it? God didn't hide it. He just couldn't access to it. They must have gone and said, we can't go in. But obviously the flood destroyed it. Maybe that was Atlantis that the people talk about, the perfect civilization. I don't know. So Adam would be alive today, not because he'd sinned. You can live forever in a sinful state if you have access to the tree of life. So there's something that can keep you living forever in that tree, that keeps mortal man, and that's the elixir of life. That's the Holy Grail. That's what the devil's tried to find out through science and inventions. The Philosopher's Stone, whatever you want to call it, the lost keys. So 46 chromosomes, let's me get back to DNA. 23 and 23, they create life. Well, one man, Satan wants to be like God. So he uses a symbol. 46 is an interesting number. And Satan uses it all the time. 46. Do you know the Pantheon in Greece? This is where gods come down to meet with men. That's where the gods come to the temples. Gods meet in the temple. Do you know how many pillars there are? 46. Why 46? Why not 48 or 3? It's the saying here. This is where the gods come down and mate with women. There's the pillars. I don't bother to count them. I've counted them. There's 46 pillars in the temple where the gods came. They're letting you know this is where it happens. I believe when Solomon dedicated the temple where the real God came down, there was a conception. I believe that's where Jesus was conceived spiritually, because God made a covenant with Israel. I'll be yours and you'll be mine. And after he gave them the laws and said, will you keep them? Will you take this man to be a lawful wedded wife, to love, obey and on? We will. And Israel agreed, because a covenant has to be agreed by both sides. And God said, if you'll agree, I'll be your God and you'll be my people. He made a marriage covenant. The law of Moses was a marriage covenant between God and Israel. And after that, God called Israel his wife in the Bible. I'm your husband, the maker, the creator of your husband. And he divorced Israel, so he counted Israel his wife. But when did he consummate the marriage? I believe it was in Solomon's temple. Solomon built the temple where God would dwell. Gods dwell in temples, don't they? The Greeks know that. That's where Zeus came down and to these temples that they built. And when Solomon built the temple, it was pure. No one had gone in it. No flesh contaminated. It was virgin. It was the womb, the holiest of holies. That's like the womb, the outer court, the body, the inner court, the mind, and the heart is the holiest of holies. Your body is a temple. That's why you've got an outer court, an inner court, and a holiest of holies. And God's not happy with your flesh, and he's not happy with your mind. He wants the heart. He wants your holiest of holies. So Solomon dedicated the temple. It was perfect and holy, all gold representing the glory of. And what happened? The priests were going in to officiate the first sacrifices. And God said, no, the glory of God came down and they couldn't go in. The holy priest couldn't go in the temple. Why? Because God says, that's the womb of Israel. I'm going, and spiritually, I believe that's where the conception of Jesus was. Because when Jesus was born, you're not born instantly. There's got to be a conception, hasn't there? And that's when he was conceived spiritually. In David's temple, it wasn't Solomon's temple. Solomon only built it for David. God gave David the plan. It was David's plan to build the temple, not Solomon's. So it's really David's temple. And that's why Jesus is son of David. That's why Jesus had the DNA of David with Mary's egg to become fully human. And according to the seed of David, according to the fleshes, he wasn't half God and half man. That's hybrid. That's an abomination. He was fully human. 23 chromosomes from Mary, 23 for David. And I believe spiritually it happened in there. Ezekiel 16 is funny because God's talking about Israel, but he's not talking about Israel. He said, I saw you in your mother's blood and I got you and I clothed you and it came the time for love. Your breasts grew and it's puberty, so I could now make love to you, and I covered you with my skirts. I made love to you and you became mine, and then you played the whore. It doesn't talk about Israel. It's Jerusalem. Why Jerusalem? Why not Israel? That's his wife, because Jerusalem is the womb of Israel, I believe. I'm going into other things, but I don't know whether you've caught it. So Satan is the counterfeit, so he makes temples so the gods can come down. And often in Greek mythology, that's where they came and mated with women. So there's 46, representing the 46 chromosomes, angels and demons. Well, there's hundreds of illustrations, that's just one. Did you know the Masons believe that the Bible is the mystery of all the ages? The Masons believe that the mystery of all ages is in the Bible. It is. The real and the counterfeit. Did you know the Orange Order, which is occult, and the UDF, Ultra Defence Force? David Hamilton was in that. He was a terrorist. He got shot all over himself, and his testimony's on YouTube. He had to swear when he entered the UDF. He had to swear on the King James Bible. It's amazing, isn't it? It was not some, spurious translation, the New Age translation on the King James Bible. Did you know in the Masonic temple, the King James Bible sits on the pedestal? I've got a picture of it. This is a Masonic temple. So you can see the truth or the anti-truth in the Bible depending who your God is. If your God is Satan, you'll find all the mysteries to the occult in the Bible. And you'll find all the mysteries of God in the Bible. It's a dangerous book. Because the devil quoted the Bible to Jesus, you see. You know William Blake, I don't know if you know your history, but William Blake, the great poet, he believed that London, after the fire of London, and they rebuilt it on Masonic principles. It's all Masonic, everything is Masonic in London. And he believed that London was the new Jerusalem. He wrote the song, didn't he? And did those feet in ancient times walk upon England's mountain greens, and was the Lamb of God, and was not Jerusalem builded here in England's green and pleasant land? They sing that at the football matches, done. And was Jerusalem builded here? That was William Blake. He believed that it was occult. And you know what he said? He was an occultist. Both read the Bible day and night, but thou readest black where I read white. There's a duality. That's why you've got the checkerboard in all the Masons' temples, the black and the white, the yin and the yang, they balance out, you see, the black and the white, the good. What he's saying is, you read it literally, you read the black print, don't you? We read the black print, they read the white, the spaces. They read the print, but they see something hidden in the white. Do you understand? Read it. Read the Bible day and night. But you read black. But I read white. I don't look at the words. I look at the hidden meanings behind them, you see. That's the occult. It's amazing how God's made a book that you can get occult doctrine. False cults call the Bible, don't they? Jesus is the word, not the Bible. The Bible is words about Jesus, but you can misinterpret the word. You can't misinterpret Jesus. He's a person. You either know him or you don't. But knowing the word is not knowing Jesus. That's knowing the written word. And an atheist can learn all the words and all the doctrines of Christianity, and every doctrine can be right, but he doesn't know the author. Jesus is the word. If you don't know Jesus, you'll never get just revelation. By just, I mean true revelation. Well, the Masons have a fixation with Solomon's temple. I don't know if you know, but the two pillars in the temple, well, there's the King James Bible. Can you see the Masonic symbol? There's the King James Bible. Amazing, isn't it? Because they believe the mysteries, all the occult mysteries are in the Bible, the mystery of all ages. Well, it is. And the pillars that they always have, they have two pillars. There's the two pillars, the Masonic pillars. And do you know what the B and the J for? That's Boaz and Jason. That was the pillars in Solomon's temple. They had a name. Do you know how high the pillars were in Solomon's temple? 23 cubits high. 23 and 23, that makes 46. And in the temple they have the two pillars and they have an arch connecting them. 23 and 23, the Antichrist. That's the hexagram. It's two triangles, isn't it? One comes down and one comes up. If you get two triangles and put them together, you get the hexagram, don't you? Star of David. That's angels coming down and men coming up. Angels mating with the women of the earth. That's what it means. That's as below, so above. They come together, the two pillars. It's all symbolism. Now, you don't need to know all the symbolism. I need to know because I'm teaching on it. So I'm not suggesting you go on the website and learn all that. You just need to be aware that Satan uses symbolism. So let's look at 1 Kings 7, 15 and 16. This is where God came down to the temple of Solomon. And Solomon cast two pillars of brass of 18 cubits high. That's not 23, is it? That's the pillar. And a line of 12 cubits didn't compass either of them about. That's perhaps the circumference. And he made two chapiters of molten brass to sit upon the top of the pillars. The height of the one chapiter was 5 cubits. So 17 and 5 is 23, isn't it? It makes 23, that's it. The height of the other chapter was 5 cubits. So he's letting you know that the pillar with the chapiter on top, was 23 cubits. So numerology, everything in the Bible is an allegory. Just think of some symbols. The lion. Oh, that's the lion of the tribe of Judah. It's Jesus. No, it's Satan. As a roaring lion seeking who he came devour. Can you see? You need to get the right symbolism. The communion. It's a cup of blessing. It's a cup of devils as well. Judas took the same cup as all the 12. They took the cup of blessing. When he gave it Judas, he dipped it in the cup and gave it. It said Satan entered him so he must have taken the cup of devils, same cup. It's dual, can you see? Everything. Jesus said, I am the true vine. He didn't say I'm the vine. There must be a false vine. He says, I'm the true vine. There's many vines in the world and people are attached to them, but I'm the true vine. So there's a counterfeit vine. If there's a true, there's a false. Or else you just say, I'm the vine. Can you see how you've got to be careful? Because people in the world see it differently, or Satan sees things differently than we do. The Bible's full of numerology and colours, isn't it? Well, Satan's looking for these lost keys for his own end. And sadly, Christians see allegories of Jesus and redemption in occult films and books. I'm amazed how there's an occult book and Christians will see an allegory of Jesus. They look at the Lion King and thought, well, that's Jesus coming to take his rightful place. But actually, it's a satanic allegory of the Antichrist. The real one coming back. Because don't forget, when the Antichrist comes, he's got a good argument. What's your Jesus done for 2,000 years? You say he rose from the dead. What's he done? The world's in a mess. We've got wars, we've got famine, we've got pandemics. Jesus is a saviour. Look at the mess of the world. Lucifer is the real Christ, and he'll bring world peace. Jesus didn't bring world peace, did he? What's your Jesus done for the world? Nothing. They've got a good argument, haven't they? To an unsanctified mind, it's a good argument. What's Jesus done? This man, Antichrist, he's got world peace. We've got no wars. He's got rid of famine. When you say peace, peace, then sudden destruction. But for a while, he'll be the real Jesus. That's the Lion King come back to take his rightful place. Black is white and white is black. We see it as a Christian allegory. And some of the fairy stories, we see them as Christian allegories. They're actually Satan's allegories. And the Lion King is certainly, it's about reincarnation and about all sorts of things. Listen, Hollywood don't do Christian allegories. Just remember that. If it's a Hollywood blockbuster, I don't care whether it's Lord of the Rings and Narnia Tales, they don't do Christian allegories. They're always occult allegories. Do you remember when I preached this in 2009, Superman had just come out, the Man of Steel, remember it? Well, all superheroes are allegories of Antichrist, not the true Christ. Jesus wasn't a superhero. Jesus Christ superstar is blasphemy. He wasn't a superstar. He was a rejected prophet and they crucified him. He didn't come to save the planet. Jesus didn't come to save the planet. He came to save people. Superman has come to save the planet. What was he working? What's his job? Clark Kent. He works in the Daily Planet. Do you think that's by chance? He's come to save the planet, not the paper. Jesus couldn't come to save the planet. It's going to be reserved to fire. He came to save people. Jesus was not a superhero. He wasn't the first one. It's a blasphemy. And every superhero from the Marvel comics is an allegory of Antichrist, the Antichrist. He was a suffering saviour, wasn't he? He went as a lamb to the slaughter. He didn't save the planet. So Spider-Man, Superman, all these are allegories of the Antichrist. And they don't have human flesh. Jesus had human flesh. He was tempted in all points as we. But they're hybrid. Superman, he came from another planet. He's a hybrid. He's got superpowers. Like Christ, but it's from the occult. He's not really human. That's an abomination to God, the mixture, hybrid. And it's Satan's prophecy of what will happen in the last days. Did you know when Superman came out, Man of Steel, that Warner Brothers had a website for ministers? Man of Steel. And this is Warner Brothers. They put out a resource for ministers. There it is, Man of Steel, ministry resources. This is Warner Brothers, the Hollywood blockbuster that puts out pornographic films, and they give whole sheets, free ministry resources for ministers to show the parallel between Superman and Jesus, how Superman left his father, and they're trying to parallel Superman with Jesus. That's blasphemy. And ministers used it, they preached on it in the sermons. And I've heard ministers preach on occult things, superheroes and television series that were occult, and they parallel it with Jesus. They don't know what they're doing. They're blind as bats. Well, I'll ask you to consider, why would satanic controlled Hollywood want to do this? Simply to prepare the church for Antichrist. Why would Warner Brothers spend millions making ministry resources for ministers? To prepare the world for the Man of Steel, the Antichrist superhero. He'll be a superhero, Antichrist. He'll have powers. He'll bring down fire from heaven and deceive all the world. I'm quoting Revelation 13. and have power to deceive people by the miracles that he does. The Antichrist will convince the world through miracles. He'll have superpowers like Superman. And he'll save the world, apparently. The prophecies occult. Back to DNA, we're coming to an end. I'll just mention once again. It's hard to believe this. Do you know when the devil spoke to Eve, you will not surely die? If you look at all the words Satan said to Eve, do you know how many words there are? 46. Now, is that by chance? He spoke 46 words to Eve. Do you know how many words they said at the Tower of Babel? You can read it in the King James Version. How many words? Let's go to and build a tower and temple and reach God and all that. 46 words. Let me read you what the devil said to Eve. This is the exact words. Obviously, there's commentary in between it, but these are the words. Yes, as God said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden. You shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day you eat it, then your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods. That's his plan. You'll be gods, knowing good and evil. 46 words. Now, that's not by chance. If the Bible's inspired by God, every sentence, every number of words in a sentence. The Babylon. Genesis 11, 3 and 4. This is 46 words. This is what they said at this is the ethos of Babylon. Go to, let us make brick, let's empire build, let's build cities and burn them thoroughly. Go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach to heaven. That's spiritual talk. It obviously didn't think they could build bricks. And let us make a name, lest we scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. Even God won't stop us. Let's do it so we're not scattered. Why would they say that? How did they know God would scatter them? Don't you think that's amazing? They said, let's do this, lest we're scattered. That's what God did, he scattered them. But they're trying to stop that. They've got an agenda to be gods. And God will, they know that it's anti-God and God will scatter us. Let's do this. 46 words. And there's hundreds of illustrations I could give where 46 is mentioned and significant in the plan of God and the plan of Satan. Well, Jesus said it would be like the days of Noah. Well, the angels mated with women in the days of Noah, didn't they? And I think it's already started. The whole subject's scary and unbelievable to most people. But you know, the films of Superman and Lois Lane, in the early films, he fell in love with her, Lois Lane, didn't he? But he knew he couldn't marry her because he wasn't fully human. Have you got the plot? He knew he couldn't marry her because he'd come from another planet, and therefore he knew he couldn't mate with a woman. Now the films, they're actually mating with them in the films. There's a series called Heroes in America. Hero was a Greek demigod. The result of a god coming down and mated with a woman, and Hero was the child. So he's a type of Antichrist. And it's called Heroes. And these people on the earth, they think they're normal, but then they find out they have superpowers. I'm not fully human. I could do this like Spider-Man. Suddenly I could do this, I could do that. They have superpowers. They find out they're not fully human because it's a result of mating between angels, spiritual things, and flesh and blood. And the media's deceiving us completely. It's most Christians and think it's just entertainment, but it's not. It's preparing us for what's going to happen on the earth. The Da Vinci Code's very interesting. Dan Brown is a very interesting man because he said he's not a Mason and he's not into the occult. Just like the writer of Harry Potter, she said, oh, I'm not into witchcraft. I don't believe in witchcraft. I'll tell you what, she knows a lot about it, right, about Harry Potter. If she's not a witch, you know. And he says, oh, I'm not into the occult. But it's amazing, his knowledge. And the Da Vinci Code, it's about preserving the holy bloodline. That Jesus, who was part God, mated with Mary Magdalene, and they trace in the bloodline. And it's a very interesting book. His last book, they've not made it a film yet, The Lost Symbol. Very informative. It's like the history of the occult world. This book, Secret History of the World, do you know what the Daily Express said, a reporter from the Daily Express? Dan Brown's non-fiction source for The Lost Symbol might well be Jonathan Black's The Secret History of the World. That's where Dan Brown got all his information from. The Secret History. It's full of it. He quotes that from Blake in the book. Read the Bible day and night, you see black, will I read white. It's an amazing book. That's where Dan Brown's got all his information from. Well, let's come to an end. Did you know that the chromosomes, I said it earlier, they form in an X? X marks the spot. It's funny that we use an X where the mystery is. X marks the spot. It's to do with the X chromosomes, the mystery. They could use a letter Y, couldn't they? Or the letter T for the mystery, but they use the X. Chromosomes X. Where the treasure is. How many films have X in the title? The X-Men. That's a modern one. The X-Men. It's all about men who have superpowers. The X-Files. You'll find the films are about DNA and that, and hybrid people. Well, let me finish there. I'm only halfway through, so we'll do the next study. It'll be study 29, but it's part of this. It won't be as long as this, but let me just pray that God will help us. Father, I pray that people won't see this as just information and academic, Lord. I pray that they'll see what I'm trying to show, Lord, that there's a parallel to everything that God does. The Bible is a very dangerous book because you can get the occult philosophy and the secret of the mysteries of the occult in the Bible as well as the truth. No wonder Jesus talked in parables and mysteries and prophecies, because you need initiation into Christ to understand it. Just like you need initiation in the occult to see the other side. I pray, Father, that when we read the Bible, we'll see the black. We'll see what is written in black and white, and leave the mysteries to the occult. And you will reveal your truth. Lord, you are the Word. It's not what's written, it's a person. And I pray, Lord, that we'll long to know the person. For Paul didn't have a Bible, he didn't have a New Testament. The early Jews didn't have the New Testament, but they knew the risen Christ. And that's the important thing. Lord, if I was locked in a prison and they took the Bible away, why would it have a lesser relationship with you? Why would I know less of you because I didn't have a Bible? It's not about the Bible, it's about you. You are the Word, Lord. And I pray we'll take our eyes off books and literature, Lord, and even the Bible. And I read it every day. But it's the living Word that matters. It's Christ in us, the hope of glory. And I just pray, Lord, that we'll get the reality that it's Christ that gives the revelation. It's getting to know Christ. Please help us, Father. And I pray you'll take away all the information that's not necessary for people to know, Father. I've researched it, but it's not necessary for them to know. I just pray they'll get a hunger and a thirst to know you, who is life eternal. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Help us, Father, to not get bogged down with research and DNA and all those things, Father. I ask it in your name. Amen. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Hope you tune in for the next study.